Okay, we are recording live and just really excited about our show today. We've had a little bit of a break and we're back. So this is going to be a great chat. Um, so normally Devin's here and he does all of the introductions, but he's as everybody knows, he's an actor, so he's always on set somewhere or doing something. And yeah, so I'm not quite sure where he is today. So I'm going to do the intro here. So here we go. Are you worried about our global hunger for energy? Do you wonder if solar is a practical solution and will it develop quick enough for our exponential demands globally? In his new book, Freeing Energy, our guest today excites you about our future, which is really cool, really cool. So we're so happy to talk to career tech CEO, clean energy disruptor, and author Bill Nussey. And if you like what we're doing, please like, share, and subscribe to Impact. It makes a difference if you share, and so we can all change the world here together bit by bit. And this episode is sponsored by Hollyhock, dedicated to helping create a better future via education and personal sharing. Hollyhock's an amazing place. I've been there multiple times. It's up on Cortez Island, and it's a think tank for game changers around the world, and it's a really cool thing. So if you ever get a chance, check out Hollyhock. But first, what we do with our guests is we do something called Two Truths and a Lie. Okay, Bill. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I really love your mission.
Nice. No, thank you. I love your mission. I watched your TED Talk and some of your interviews over the weekend here, and I was just blown away. And I really think that what you're doing and what you're talking about really can shift the needle here, not just a little bit, but a heck of a lot. So, really excited about chatting here. But let's go through these couple of truths and a lie. Okay, number one, and I'm gonna have to figure out what is the lie here. Okay. So Bill started his first tech company while he was in high school. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah. And then number two, Bill sold his first company to IBM. Okay, so it starts it in high school and then sells it to IBM. Wow, that's really neat. And then number three, in 2017, his TED Talk was so popular it grew to the number one ranked renewable energy podcast. Okay, that's cool. And I got a fourth one here. Bill received a degree in quantum physics from the North Carolina State University and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. A whole lot of stuff here. Man, I'm going to guess here. Usually Devin and I banter back and forth on this one. So I'm going to drum roll. Yeah. I'm going to say you didn't start your first company while you were in high school.
Yeah. I did start my first company in high school. Yes, cool. I did.
Cool.
I was in 10th grade, and I couldn't play sports to save my life. So I found computers, and it was good time to find them. And my dad would drive me to this place in a nearby city, and I signed a contract and was selling software nationally by the time I was in 11th grade.
Oh my gosh.
And that was pretty unusual, particularly back as old as I am. That was very unusual.
Wow. Yeah.
So
wow.
How does this go now? Do you guess?
I just like that. That's incredible. I just like the backstories on some of these is always great. And then yeah, what else? Is there another? Okay, so I got to figure out which is the lie then. Or you can tell me which is the lie, I guess.
So I did sell my last company to IBM, but not my first. So my first company I sold to a publicly traded company that's long since forgotten.
Right.
But my last company was sold to IBM about 5-6 years ago.
Oh, fantastic. Wow, there you go. And then your TED Talk did lead to the number one ranked renewable energy podcast. Is that right?
So the Freeing Energy, which is my podcast and the name of my book,
that's right,
is now recently ranked the number one renewable energy podcast. Very proud of that. Yes.
Very good.
So that one's true. The one that's not true is, I did get a degree from North Carolina State University. Go Pack.
Right.
I didn't get it in quantum physics.
No.
No, just a more run-of-the-mill electrical engineering, which was way too much for my little brain, and so quantum physics just makes me sweat thinking about it. But electrical engineering nearly kicked my butt. So
yeah, no doubt. And then also the MBA out of Harvard as well.
I did do that. Yes, there's a funny story on that, but I applied. There was one business school in the United States that did not require the GMAT, and I did not have time to apply to go to business school. I didn't have time for business school, but I said, you know what? There's one school I don't have to take the GMAT. I'm going to go ahead and apply there. Got in. Crazy.
That's great.
I said, well, I guess I'm going if I got into Harvard.
I guess I'm going. Yeah. I guess if you get into Harvard,
hey, honey, let's move up to Boston.
Yeah. Not a bad place. I love Boston. It's a great spot. Yeah. I go every year. I belong to an entrepreneurial conclave, and we meet out there once a year. I've been going 18 years now. It's supposed to be a 3-year program at MIT. It's an off-campus called the Endicott House, and we meet there. There's 75 entrepreneurs. We lock ourselves down and we kind of share ideas. We bring in speakers, and it's just been. Cool. I just love that area. It's just fantastic. Yeah. So okay, let's get right into this stuff here, because this is kind of earth shattering for me, and you've mentioned here that you have $1 trillion, like $1 trillion. We're talking a whole lot of bucks here. $1 trillion startup opportunity that almost none of us see coming. So you want to share a little bit of that? I'm sure people want to hear what that may be.
When I sold my last company at IBM, I stepped away for a little while. It was actually the day we were announcing the deal.
Yes.
And I knew this was one of those momentous times in my life. So I stepped out of the room for 20 minutes just to sort of take it in. And while I was sitting there, for the first 30 seconds, I was like, this is really cool. I sold my company. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And then I think probably something you're familiar with, I was hit with a sense that, but what I do should really matter. I should apply my network and my business experience and a little bit of financial comfort towards something that matters. And that started me on a journey to find something that checked 3 boxes. Yes. The first box was, how do we save the planet, right? Mm-hmm. How do we make it so that our grandchildren and our great-great-great-grandchildren can live as wonderfully as we have? 2, there's a billion people that have absolutely unfortunate circumstances, and for a little bit of help could change the direction of their lives and communities. Mm-hmm. And then third, I was looking for a really enormous business opportunity, and particularly looking for something that was disruptive, because I love disruptions. My whole business career has been about getting into an industry when it's about to get turned upside down by outsiders, and the incumbents are denying it, and the outsiders are naive and brilliant. And I love being part of that. And so I took a long journey over the following years and came up with clean energy. Mm-hmm. And here's, let me give you some numbers to give you a sense of just how substantial this is.
Yeah.
If you ask people, what's the largest infrastructure investment in U.S. history, most people correctly guess that it's the U.S. highway system, about $500 billion over 25 years.
Right.
Not as many people know that if you look at the last 25 years, the U.S. and the world has invested about $1 trillion in venture capital. So an almost unimaginable amount of money has moved into these 2 areas over the last 50, 60 years.
Right.
But each had a 25-year window. If you look at the next 25 years of clean energy investments, the most conservative estimates are $17 trillion. And McKinsey, the global think tank consulting firm, estimates that in order for us to achieve the goals of reducing carbon and other greenhouse gases, we're going to have to invest about $9 trillion a year. Mm-hmm. So you got to stop for a moment and think, we're going to spend almost 10 times each single year, all venture capital invested since venture capital started. The amount of money that's going to be flowing here is unprecedented. It's the largest investment in human history, the largest business opportunity in human history. Mm-hmm. And now, for all the entrepreneurs and venture capitalists that are listening in, to be clear, much of this is infrastructure investment. So they're not going to return a 25% or 100% IRR,
right,
or any other sort of hyper growth kind of return. Mm-hmm. But when this much money is moving around, the opportunity to innovate, to provide better tools, as I like to say, to sell the picks and shovels during the gold rush.
Right.
Picks and shovels is a great business if there's a gold rush going on. And that's exactly what's happening here. And the opportunities for entrepreneurs and innovators and advocates, that's really what Freeing Energy, the podcast, the book are all about, is how to people that want to shake things up, that want to make a difference, make a dent in the universe, to quote Steve Jobs. How can they do it? And the opportunities are just tremendous.
Right.
But with one caveat, and the energy industry and the electricity industries, which I include in energy.
Yes.
Electricity is a monopoly in most places in the world.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Energy is controlled by an oligopoly of giant multi-billion-dollar corporations. So at first blush, it looks like this has huge mountains to climb before you can participate. And that's what the book's about, is how do you get around those mountains and make a big difference as an individual or as a small company or as an entrepreneur.
Right. I mean, like similar to the oil industry. Yeah.
Exactly like the oil industry.
Now it's breaking down, and yeah. Oh my gosh. So I've done a little bit of reading and listening to your TED Talk here, and so we're talking about some small scale energy systems, right? That everybody can take part in, or pretty much everybody can take part in.
That's the big idea that we call it local energy, and that is the entire thing. I should have called the book Local Energy, but no one would know what it meant.
Right.
But, but the local energy is your small scale solar, rooftop solar, commercial solar on your church and school and office complex, on your house, and batteries. Those two need to go together. And while everybody who's in the renewable energy industry, or pretty much everybody, is familiar with that market segment, it is completely overlooked, and its potential is continuously underrated because it is on a very different business model than all the other energy systems that we've ever had as human beings, whether they're oil and gas, hydrocarbons, coal, nuclear fuel, uranium, whether it's large scale wind, solar, geothermal. These small scale systems operate on a completely different business model. Right. And that's something that very few people see. Yeah. And that's why I decided to take a pretty good tech career and throw it away and write a book. Because the book is dedicated to the 10,000 people that have not yet, but will soon join the local energy revolution and accelerate our path to clean energy and a better future for everybody.
So now you say that these small scale energy systems are kind of treated like the kid, because I was one of these kids, the kids at the Thanksgiving dinner table, where, you get everybody, all the adults are sitting having their conversation, and all the kids are sitting at some little table in the corner there, which was me. And
me too.
You're getting your, not the leftovers, but you're kind of there talking kid stuff, and it's just kind of, they're over there, but we don't really hear them, right? I loved that you mentioned that, right?
And so you've got these massive industries, and they look over at the small scale stuff, and they just see it as small scale.
Sure.
And I used to work at IBM. I sold my company to them, and once upon a time, famously, they looked at small scale computers as something that was dismissive. They actually launched the first small scale computers at scale, and they even missed it then. And yet, that's the industry that overran most of the incumbency that IBM had enjoyed for decades with the large scale computer systems. And the same thing played out in transportation and distribution. It played out on media. I mean, YouTube has become a force that has overshadowed most television stations, most movie studios. And so this small scale individual actions, time and time again, when technology is involved, they can rewrite all the rules of a business market. And that's what's so fun. It's a disruption.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many, like for this, rooftop solar panels. I mean, there's so many houses, there's so many, like you said, churches and buildings that we can put these on, now, like right now, and make a huge difference. But it's so slow. Like in North America here, we're so slow at doing it. And then you mentioned, but because my son's living in Australia, and there's solar everywhere. It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
They
one in four houses have solar, and it's accelerating.
Yeah.
It's accelerating. Well, do you know why?
What are we doing?
Well, here's a fun fact for you.
Yeah.
You should see me at cocktail parties. I don't go to cocktail parties, but if I did, I'd be the guy dropping all these fun facts that nobody cares about. But if you, anywhere in the US or probably Canada, if you put up a solar panel on a roof, it's going to cost you pretty consistently about $3 a watt. Right. So the average system in the US is 4,000 watts, 4 kilowatts, $12,000 on average. Some are more expensive than that, but that's about the same. And that buys you your panels, that buys you your inverters, your wiring, and of course the labor to go up on the roof. So $3 a watt in the US. If you take the exact same solar panels, the exact same inverters, and you put people on the roof in an Australian roof, Australians are only paying $1.10 in US dollars for the exact same installation.
Oh my gosh.
So it has nothing to do with the fact that it's sunnier in Australia. Truth is, you get actually more energy from the panels than you would say in Canada.
Sure.
But
Just all the red tape here.
this is just pure red tape in the U.S. We have 3,000 different overlapping jurisdictions. I could tell you story after story of my own experiences putting up panels. And everyone has those stories. And in Australia, I'm told that you go online in Monday morning and your house is connected to the grid generating electricity with panels on top Tuesday evening, or starting Tuesday afternoon. Whereas in the US, it's going to take you at least a month. And so much of that is just waiting and filing and connection timing. And it's just bureaucracy. Wow. And so that by itself, even as exciting as it is to see the price of solar panels continue to plummet, if we can just get rid of some of the red tape, the U.S. is going to see even more acceleration towards embracing rooftop.
And I guess there's a lot of lobbying from the coal industry and whatnot in the U.S. and probably here in Canada and to kind of keep this at bay, similar to what the oil industry was doing.
Well, the coal industry is actually much more focused on just keeping themselves alive, where you see the incumbents pushing back on the small scale solar is typically from the utilities, the electric utilities.
Right.
And there are some, in my book, I chronicle several stories of some shockingly bad behavior. I mean, it's hard to believe these, some of the utilities do this. Now, most utilities are stand-up companies. They do all the right things above board. They're leaning into the future, but too many of them have given the industry a bad name by creating fake grassroots organizations. There was a famous story out of Louisiana which went offline last year because of the hurricane that went through, and there had been a strong effort to put up small scale solar battery microgrids throughout the city to make sure that especially people who were less fortunate, lower income, that they would have access to charge their phones and have places to go in safety that were electrified. And the utility basically said, no, we're going to put up a giant natural gas plant that will give the city power if the grid goes down. And the city council was divided on this, but what really swayed them towards going with the utilities' safer solution, they thought, was there was a huge protest outside the city council that day. They made the decision. There was dozens, I think 50, 100 people out there marching with signs saying, don't waste our money on small scale systems, go build a giant coal plant. And so the city was swayed and they committed $500 million, I think, to make the gas plant. Well, guess what? Can you see what's coming on this? It's all documented. I'm not making this up. You can find 1,000 articles on it. The people that were marching were actors, and they were paid by the utility. And when it finally came to light from a whistleblower, the utility was fined, I believe, $5 million, which seems like a slap on the wrist to me. Yeah. But they were fined $5 million, but they still had their gas plant. And then the hurricane came through, and what happened? The gas plant failed, and everyone in Louisiana was left without, especially people that needed electricity the most, were left without any. And the city, in hindsight, had made a huge mistake, swayed by this astroturfing organization that had picketed. Picketed. It was all made up, and that's the worst example. But there's others that aren't quite as bad. But the utilities have a lot to lose if local energy takes off. And many of them know it. I've had several utility executives on my podcast who say, listen, this is the future. Our job is not to sell kilowatt hours. Our job is to deliver reliable electricity to our customers for the lowest possible price. And it's a fact. No one disputes that if you have rooftop solar and batteries, it's more reliable.
Yes.
California is having outages.
I know. California, right now,
Arizona.
I have friends.
Right now, they are probably this minute.
Yeah, right now. Yeah, exactly. Look what's going on down there now. It's crazy.
And the adoption of solar and battery is taking off because some people have medical equipment, oxygen machines, or they work from home and they have to be on the internet for whatever number of reasons. Even having the highest end solar and battery system might be a bit more expensive in some cases. They have to have it. So the adoption rate is just accelerating.
Because I was saying I have a buddy in Arizona, and then I have a buddy in Orange County in California, and they both have solar. This is backup. So backup systems. They got solar on the roof, and then they got the Tesla batteries, right?
Yes.
And they're storing because they said they get so many and I'm like, you guys get blackouts? He says, oh yeah, we get blackouts all the time. Like, really? Because up here we we don't get that many. I guess we're on hydro, and I don't know, whatever happens, we don't get that.
It depends on your
Blackouts.
utility.
Yeah, and our
It
utility.
varies
Yeah.
all around the world as to,
Yeah.
you could be in one county and have blackouts and an adjacent county
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Just it's
So they say these things are amazing. Like they say they're so seamless. They said that
yes.
even your clocks don't reset.
Yes.
He said it's just I'm like, really? Like he said, no, everything is just like you would never know the power was out because we're running on these, we're saving the energy and we're storing it in these Tesla battery packs, and we're running our facilities and houses and whatever. It's just it's incredible. It's almost becoming a no-brainer. But
yeah, and the cost of solar by itself, the batteries add some cost today, but those prices are plummeting.
Yeah, they are.
The cost of solar, this is a point that I try to make in freeing energy, that is, I think, the primary reason that everybody misses the fact that local energy is going to become so dominant. And it goes like this. The difference between solar and battery and every other system, hydrocarbons, coal, gasoline, electricity, nuclear power, solar and batteries are technologies, not fuels.
Yes.
Every other system we've ever had to power humanity of any kind has been a fuel, and that those economics are well known. They're not getting a whole lot better over the century that we've been adopting them heavily. And so the people that have planned for our oil and gas systems and have planned for our electricity systems have never seen a technology at work. And what's happening is that we are making solar and batteries in such large volumes, in the same way we make flat screen televisions and iPhones, and headphones, everything. These are technologies that we're making. We make massive volumes in factories, and the price just goes down and down and down. Now, if you were to say, like, you're going to get a new iPhone in 3 years, you would expect that iPhone would be substantially more powerful. The camera would be substantially better, to have substantially more memory. That's not a surprise. It's an expectation. And I come from the computer world, so that's something that the entire industry is based on. In 3 years, we're going to have better, faster, cheaper computing. Well, if you're selling coal, it's not going to be half the cost in 3 years. It's you're selling natural gas. It's not going to be half the cost in 3 years, right? Not even close. And so this is a business dynamic that is leaving the entire energy industry blindsided.
Yes.
And so just put some numbers to it. I went and looked at 6 or 7 projections from a variety of different groups of how much small scale solar and battery would be going down in price over the next 20 years. And they were all, and these were not environmental firms, these were analysts and economists. And to a group, they thought that the price of these systems would be half or less of buying electricity from the grid. And so just 3-4 years ago, the only people putting solar up were environmentalists, because they were prepared to pay more to do their part for the world. So you just fast forward in 10 or 20 years, and it's the cheapest option by a mile for everybody.
Wow.
And no one sees this coming. And the cool part is that this part of energy is not dominated by monopolies and giant multinational oligopolies. These are going to be small companies. This is going to be your next door neighbor owns a solar installation company, right? This is going to be an entirely different shift in the way that energy works in the world, and it's very exciting. It's going to change the world, and that's why I'm so pumped and excited to share this with you.
You mentioned that now I don't know if this is from your TED Talk, which is a few years ago. So I don't know if the numbers are still, they're probably much better than this now. But you mentioned that private homes save about 10 to 50% on energy. This is with solar for the first 4 or 5 years, right? And then after like the 5th year, the 4th or 5th year, it's all paid off, and then you're selling back, or you're trading, which I really like this idea of your trading energy. You could be trading energy with your neighbor. You can trading, like you could have, like we do, like Airbnbs or whatever it is we're doing now, right? You're able to, I've got this energy and you can pass it and trade it. And,
well, here's the thing. So because the largest 85% of the money for you to put solar on your roof is what they call soft costs, what you a moment ago called bureaucracy and red tape. That hasn't gone down. So the solar panels themselves have gone down since I did that TED Talk 4 years ago, maybe 15, 20, 25%, but that doesn't even move the needle on the cost because it's just 10% of the cost. So what hasn't changed and is only now even being recognized is the red tape. And so the good news is that the prices are getting lower and lower every year, but much more slowly than they should. We could just make a giant leap with a little bit of federal legislation and be caught up with Australia in terms of cost, but that's probably not going to happen. Good news is it's cheaper today than it was 4 years ago to put solar on your roof, and it's going to be cheaper again in 2 or 3 years. So I do think that that's happening. The part that isn't happening and probably won't happen in the United States for a little while is that energy trading. If I learned anything in the last 3 or 4 years, the degree of legislation and incumbent power, they do not want us to trade electricity.
Right.
It's technically straightforward, but it is fundamentally illegal. If you and I lived next door to each other and we were trading electricity, and the utility found out, we would almost certainly be sued, and teams of lawyers would be showing up. And that's,
oh my gosh.
So the good news is that places like Australia, where your son is, they're rapidly doing this, and it's working. And in Japan, all throughout the European Union, electricity trading is such a smart answer. It's such a great win for people. But in the U.S., the utilities just don't want to see it happen. And
so they're doing this. They're doing this now in Australia, Japan, and in parts of Europe. They're trading. They're able to do this.
Yes. If you have a lot of batteries in your house, and I have excess solar in mine, we can work through any number of market mechanisms. Mostly we can find them, or I can just walk over and give you a glass of beer for your extra storage you gave me yesterday. Anything you want. That's my understanding.
Wow. And you also mentioned that when we install these smaller scale solar, like on our roof, funds go back into the community. They're not going 1,000 miles away to the utility. They're actually being used in our community, right? There's money.
One of the stories I think that if you talk to people in the industry, they'll tell you, well, it's so much cheaper to put solar in giant solar farms. And so I was interviewing an executive of a large electric utility, and he knew I was interested in local energy, and he very much like the kid at the Thanksgiving table, he said to me, he says, well, Bill, listen, if people want to put solar on their roof and they want to help the environment, I'm all for that. But listen, I'm a dollars and cents kind of guy. It doesn't make any economic sense to do that. We can put up giant 50, 100, 500 acre solar farms for a fraction of the cost that people can put it on the roof. So ultimately that's never going to matter. The economics aren't even close. And people that even advocate for rooftop solar agree with that statement. But here's the point, Nigel, it's wrong. It's entirely wrong. And what I said to him was, I said, so if you put up a 500 megawatt solar plant, an enormous one with huge economies of scale, and you put it 20 miles outside my city, when you turn that thing on, is my electricity bill going to go down? And he goes, well, no. And I said, so if I put a solar on my roof, will my electricity go down? In fact, it'll go down the second I turn it on. My electricity bills are going to go down.
Sure.
So when you say it's cheaper for a large scale one, I think you mean it's cheaper for you.
Right.
It's cheaper for the utility.
Yeah.
And I said that solar is the cheapest way to generate electricity, and using it creates profits. The question is, do those profits solely live in the domain of the electric utilities, or do we share them as individuals and communities and households
with our communities? Yeah. Wow. So, I got a question here. So how could energy be one of the most powerful tools for social equity or quality? Equality?
It's I think it can go a lot of different ways.
Equity and quality.
So here's the cool thing, right? If you need to build a nuclear power plant, there's not a lot of people that can build it, and there's even fewer that can finance it. Really, only governments can support the economics of nuclear power plants.
Sure.
But if you want to, I can sell you a solar cell for $1, and that solar cell I can put that solar cell in the largest 500 megawatt solar plant sitting outside your city, or I can put it in a solar lantern in Africa. The exact same component. It's like Lego bricks. I can make, if you're a Lego nut like I am, you can make a Death Star, or you could just put 3 little pieces together and make a standing man.
Sure.
And you can put them together any way you like. And what that means is the economies, what I call economies of volume, or manufacturing economies, they apply in a way that has never existed before for people who live in low-income parts of the world. That could be a low-income part of the United States or Canada. It could be a low-income part of Africa.
Yeah.
And so today there are 770 million people in Africa and India largely that have no electricity at all.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
none. And I've traveled there and I met these people, and I met people that had never had electricity until recently.
Yes.
And what they had was these small scale solar battery systems. And they often had a television and a phone charger, so they didn't have to walk a mile or 2 or 3 every day to charge their phones.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's amazing the difference these systems can make in the people's lives.
For sure.
If you follow this, you'll hear stories about how children can study after hours and get better educated. You'll hear about how it helps women who are often tasked with taking the cell phones to be charged somewhere in town and coming back, or getting the kerosene and bringing it back to. So this system provides a change of life for these some of the lowest income people in the world.
Huge change of life. And like, cause I've been fortunate too. And we were over in Africa, we were in Kenya, and we spent some time with the Maasai, and they've got some little solar panels on certain things, but it's global education. The more people that get educated, the better our society, rises, right? Globally. And when people are held back from education and they can't, like in a lot of these places, they're still burning wood and they're burning kerosene, whatever, or they're burning plastic, like plastic in Fiji and places. They're cooking over plastic. It's horrible. But so you've got your solar panel. You got your solar panel charging, yourself, because everybody has, even in these places, they all have cell phones. They're charging.
They all have cell phones.
But then the internet is a bit of an inhibitor. But then you get like a Starlink disc, Tesla's or Elon's Musk's Starlink, right? So you can be in any place on the planet, plug this thing into your solar panels, and you've now a whole village has internet. That had,
the other one that's exciting is the other one that's exciting that I think is perhaps as foundational as anything is one of my favorite stories in Freeing Energy, both the book and the podcast, is a company called Sun Culture, run by an inspiring guy that has become a friend, Samir Ibrahim. And Sun Culture is the largest provider of solar powered irrigation. And so they go into places that even before these people have solar lights. And as you know, when you visited the Maasai, they only grow crop. Well, the Maasai don't, but the people that live there and are farming, they can only grow crops twice a year during the 2 rainy seasons. And the amount of rain is entirely unpredictable, and more so every year. And so they have to grow only the most hardy crops, which are the lowest price they can sell. And you bring drip irrigation to a 1 acre smallholder farmer, and she or he can grow strawberries. They can grow year round, and it's the revenue, the stability that brings them changes everything about it. They go relatively to being wealthy, and they're no longer worried about starving in the future years. And it's the solar plus light, solar plus internet, solar plus water. This local energy solution is a game changer in a way that creates social equity with the rest of the world. And then you zip over to the United States, where you've got places. The opening story in my book is as a community in the rural mountains of Puerto Rico. And when Hurricane Maria came through, the entire community was out of electricity for 6 months. And so how bad could that be? Well, the stories were just heartbreaking. And not only had people lost their homes already and lost a lot of the worldly possessions from the hurricane itself, so children couldn't go to school anymore, and parents had to quit what jobs they had in order to take care of the children. So the family income went to zero for 6 months or longer. And so what we did, I chronicled the story of putting a solar battery microgrid on one of the schools there, and how this one teeny change, this one 50 kilowatt system, changed the entire community. And power is incredibly unreliable in Puerto Rico, worse than most places in the world. And so this changed the community. When the power goes out, the children can remain in school, so the parents can remain in their jobs. It's for a lot of the low-income families there, the school is a source of a solid meal for the children. So the ability to keep the refrigerator running even when the power grid's down, and feeding the children, example after example after example, these local energy systems are such a better solution for so many situations. And by the way, when they put that system up on the school, it actually lowered the school's electricity costs. They had complete resiliency, solar battery system, and it still lowered the cost from paying from an unreliable grid. How crazy is that?
Yeah, that's just, I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And going back to your story about Puerto Rico, I had a couple of friends from my class in Boston. They're entrepreneurs. They had just moved to Puerto Rico prior to the hurricane. Yeah. And they had a tech company, the Abernathys. And they were there, and they ended up, the hurricane came through and just decimated everything. And then they found themselves volunteering. And then we had other friends that were flying. It was a pilot, so he was flying goods in, trying to help out. And they said the craziest thing was, as we were there, and we were like, water was the big thing. People didn't have water. So we were loading up these trucks with water. And then basically somebody handed me a gun and said, you sit on the back of the truck and and make sure this water and he's just like, are you kidding me? And he said, that's how bad it got. That's how bad it got, and when you have these catastrophes, which are happening more and more and more around the globe, global warming and all this other stuff that's going on, that that little bit of energy, or a little bit of using these solar panels,
a little bit of security.
Little bit of security. And it's funny or not funny, but when you mentioned in Africa and getting water 30 years ago with my company, we were a very niche business, so we had contacts all over the world. And I thought, what else can we put into our pipeline that we can help people? And so I brought in a line of solar powered pumps. And this is 30 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were borehole. There was a borehole pump. It was like a long pump, small pump. And it was for, areas that just couldn't access water. And it was solar powered. And we were trying to get them into Africa. But it was just like, the bureaucracy, the red tape, funding. There was, I like to give them away, but you really can't, it's really hard. You got to at least get the cost paid for. And it just died. And this is 30 years ago when I was trying to, promote.
You were so far ahead, man.
Yeah, there's a few things that we did that I realize now, that drones, like we had drones way back, which was basically aircraft with cameras for going into hazardous zones, just for video, making video, and then mapping and things like that. There's all these things. But anyway, but now we see, it's even like 10 years ago, I bought a Tesla, right? So I bought a Tesla 10 years ago when they were kind of first coming on. I've still got it. It looks brand new if I wash it. It's the best thing I've ever done. But I tell you, people in my business groups were giving me like, are you crazy? Like, wow, this is going nowhere. I had a car. I have a friend of mine that's a car critic. He has a TV show out of Toronto, and he wanted to know about these Teslas. He's calling me up all the time. Hey, Nigel, how's the Tesla going? Har, har, har. It's just a stock scam. This Elon Musk guy's nuts. Nothing's going to happen. He's going to go bankrupt. You know what? I'm like,
wow.
I said, this is the best thing I've ever freaking done. I said, because I had a BMW X5 before, and the thing would just suck the gas. And this, I was paying like $90 a year at that time, hydroelectric here in Vancouver, on energy for my Tesla. I'm like, hang on, I know they were very expensive at the time, but if you amortize it, I've had it 10 years. It was cheaper than buying the cheapest car now. And now they're everywhere. I don't know about where you are, but every third car is a Tesla model, the new Model Y, the new Model, the 3, the model, everybody's got them, and everything's, and it's just us humans, it really takes a good smack for us to change our ways. But when you get traction, things just take off, and they just take off.
And that's the whole point behind all the freeing energy work, which is that you could have easily predicted, and no one would have disputed, that the cost of batteries was going to go down dramatically, whether we made electric cars or not.
Exactly.
And they were going to get better, last longer, store more energy. That was just, electric cars have accelerated it because the demand is so high.
Mm-hmm.
But all Elon Musk and the Tesla founders had to do was draw a line and say, batteries are going to be here, and they'll probably be even lower than here in terms of the price in 5 and 10 years. Yes. And when that happens, they're going to be cheaper and more reliable than gas cars in every single way.
Yeah.
And that's what's so funny about these technology disruptions, is that very few people would have argued back in 1998 that bandwidth was going to be effectively free, right? But right. And you could have theorized that it'd be so inexpensive that you could actually send video over there, but and you could even have said, if you're really prescient, you could have said, and that video could even be a competitive platform to ABC and NBC and MGM.
Yes. Oh, I know.
And people would have just rolled their eyes and said, there's just no way, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
AT&T, when I was very young, or no, actually before I was born, they were doing video conference phones. You could actually do a television from one person to the next, and they gave it to hundreds of families, and they determined that no one wanted to use it.
Yeah.
And so they determined that video conferencing was never going to be a thing. Of course, you and I are video conferencing right here in different parts of the world. Exactly. And we were 3 or 4 minutes into our conversation before we said, by the way, where do you live?
I know.
We could have been anywhere.
That's right.
And
you
so
know what got that going too is it was COVID. I mean, there are some positive things of this crazy COVID thing. It was like this whole video conferencing, it's just gone through the roof. I mean, it's just a natural thing now.
Was ready, right?
And it was ready, and it was going. People would use it, here and there. But I mean, this put us on another planet overnight.
But nobody foresaw that if most people agreed that bandwidth would be cheap.
Yes.
Most people agreed that cameras and computers would be more powerful. And if they thought about it, they would have said, "Yeah, I can see where you could do video over a computer." Yeah. And but if you were asking the next obvious question, well, will it displace telephone calls? Will it displace MGM and ABC and CBC? And the answer would have been absolutely not. Those are institutions. And so when you look back with that perspective, say, look how much technology has changed these massive incumbents and these massive habits that we've had for a century.
Exactly.
My book in Freeing Energy is just trying to say the exact same thing is happening with energy.
Yes.
We're just at the beginning now.
It has to, and it
not
has
the end.
To. It has
to change.
Yes,
it will change.
Yes.
And the internet took over media, and personal computers took over mainframes. Cars and trucks took over railroad. Wherever you look, these small scale, nimble systems that can be owned and managed by consumers and communities will always prevail over the large institutional things. Yeah. And so we still need the large institutional stuff, but it shouldn't have the right to be completely dominant and set all the rules for everybody else. And that's what's changing. And that's why I'm so excited, because the good we can do for the world, the good we can do for communities in the US and Africa, the good we can do for startups and investors. This is like the biggest idea that no one's got their head around. So I had to write a book.
It's a no-brainer. We're here now, and it's a no-brainer. I mean, I know, the whole electric car thing. It was, this is, 10 years ago. It's just like, oh my God, you're kidding. Oh yeah, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly
but then I started driving this thing, and it was just like a rocket ship for one thing. I was, at the beginning, there were guys that pull up beside me with Ferraris and go, let's go. And I, have a little poke at them.
No, that's not legal.
It was pretty funny. Like it was really funny. And then we'd pull over to a gas station. They get out and they want to look at it. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, yeah, man, this is like the coolest thing ever. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty neat. And then I start, after like 3 or 4 years, I'm going, hang on a second. We've been driving this thing called with an internal combustion engine for like 100 years, where we actually put in this volatile fluid, very explosive, and it's exploding inside this engine, and we have cooling systems, and we have this and this and this and this and this and this, all this stuff just to keep this thing on the road. This does not make sense. What, are we completely insane? Where now we've got a battery pack. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in the front. There's nothing in the back. There's an electric motor, and you charge this thing up. The weight of the car doesn't change. Nothing changes. Everything, it's full of. It's got the electrical, and it was a no-brainer. Now everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. And now it's the same thing for
you're still in the vanguard. I mean, there's still the vast majority of people wouldn't have any idea about wanting one. That where you just see it because it's becoming at the early stages of mainstream.
Yeah, it's completely. It's still early. I just after driving this thing, this is completely insane.
Well, what's fun is one of the things I do in Freeing Energy is I talk a lot about the history of different systems. And one thing I discovered that really blew my mind was that Henry Ford worked for Edison, Thomas Edison. He was a protege of Edison's, and the very first cars were actually electric. And it was only after there was a point in the early 1900s when the majority of cars were electric.
Yes.
And so that was clearly the future. Thomas Edison went on the record many times saying electric cars are the absolute future. They're not as dirty and noisy, and they don't have to be refueled. And so he and Henry Ford put together a joint venture to launch the largest effort to make cars at scale, and they were all going to be electric.
Yes.
And they couldn't get the batteries to work when it was cold. And that kind of doomed the entire effort. And they fell back to the gasoline powered cars, which have remained dominant for 120 years since.
Yeah, I know.
But
Yeah.
now, but no longer. But
No.
the idea, it's not even a new idea. It's just an idea that whose time has come.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely insane. And same goes for this, the small, the electric. I mean, everybody could have solar panels on their roof. Like
they will.
And they will. And it's going to be 1 year, 3 year, 10 years. It's going to happen. And I think when it starts to get traction, which it is, it needs a good push. It's just going to take off. I mean, it has to. It'll take off like everything else does. When us stupid humans figure out this is the way to go.
Well, you know why I'm optimistic? Because we're no longer relying on the government with these small scale systems. To make progress in large scale systems, we need the government to pass laws, which the government struggles to do, particularly down here in the US. And what I'm a techno optimist, please forgive me, but I believe that when you unleash the innovation of entrepreneurs that occurs in garages and labs at colleges and around the kitchen table of a family room, the willingness to take risks, the willingness to have crazy, dazzling visions of the future that everyone else calls naive. Yes. Those ideas are being born because for the very first time in the entire history of energy, those kind of people, those entrepreneurs, those innovators, those kitchen table dreamers, they can actually play a role.
Sure.
And if because the technology is ready, the markets are ready. They've never been able to help for the entirety of energy history. And now they can, and it's going to be an absolute glorious disruption.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I can't wait. So can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about your book, Freeing Energy? Just before
it came out 7 or 8 months ago. You can get it everywhere. It's Freeing Energy. I always have to clarify that, not free energy.
Freeing energy.
Yes. freeingenergy.com. We have a podcast by the same name. But the book is available hardcover, softcover, ebook, Kindle, audiobook, Audible, every version. However,
you've done the audio. Books. You've done the audio. Yeah.
And not personally. I hired a professional. I should have hired you. You sound great.
God, no. But, I read that because I wrote a book and then I thought, and I did the audio version. I went into a studio and I did it, but I'm dyslexic. So I have it. So I'm like, okay, do you realize I can have a hard time reading my own book, but we had fun with it and it actually worked out okay, I think.
I thought about it and was advised against it, but you're braver than me. But the book's available in all these formats, and the podcast is turned into the #1 renewable energy podcast, which is crazy.
Love it.
And so it's there. If you want to, if you have a bent towards making an impact on the planet, if you are interested in innovative technologies and entrepreneurism, then I'd love to think that the book and the podcast could be interesting for some of the folks listening today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to promote it here, and
thank you.
On the end of this. Now, there's just one thing that I want you to say. You did a Robert F. Kennedy quote in I know it was your TED Talk, one of the interviews I listened to. Can you remember what that quote was?
I can't, but I'm going to tell it is.
Okay, I'll try and read it here again.
I got it right here.
Right? Oh, you got it. Okay, because I love this quote. I love this quote, and it really, really resonated with me.
Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and in the total of all those acts will be written the history of this generation. I love that. It's the final sentence of my book.
Yes, that's right. It was the final sentence of your book. Yeah. I love it. And it's so true. It's so true. I'll share another story, and it's a story that I shared in my book and with people on the podcast and stuff. Is that I was having a hard time because I thought that I'd set my business up to run without me, and I've done this amazing journey around the globe with the family, and then we were taking part in a lot of charity work and whatnot. But I really thought that, gosh, can I really make a difference? Can I really, what I'm doing, really make a difference in the world? Because I'm such a small little guy. Like, and I'm having conversations with people, but I was really struggling with it. And then I was in Guatemala, actually, in 2012. It was 2012 for the Mayan calendar changeover. We were down there with some friends, and we were with one of the guys there, and he says, hey, just go off into the jungle and just contemplate on whatever you want to contemplate on. It's the new year and the new Baktun for the Mayans and all that. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I wasn't really into it. And I walked into the jungle, and I sat against this big, beautiful kapok tree. They're massive trees. And I sat there, And I thought, oh, I don't know. I know I try my hardest. I really want to make a change in the world, but really, do I make a difference? I don't think I make a difference. And I was sitting there and I was sitting against a tree and I looked down and there's a whole string of cutter ants that are all making passing by my feet. And I don't know how I didn't step on them. And I had a bracelet on my wrist. And I took it off and I blocked their path, right? Blocked their path just to see what would happen. And the first guys were bumping in against it and they were carrying their twigs and everything and their leaves, and they kind of bumped it. And then they would slowly work their way around. And then the trail just kind of went around my bracelet, just carried on, taking all the little bits to the queen. And I sat there and I thought, that's it. That's what it is. There's so many of us around the globe that are doing our little bit, carrying our twig or carrying whatever to make a difference in the world. We may never, ever see each other. We may never hear of them. But collectively, we make a huge change in the world, and we will change the world. So, don't get discouraged. Nigel, you are making a difference. Bill, you are making a huge freaking difference. And so that really gave me some peace with, what I was doing and whatnot. Cause we get discouraged. Like we're like, oh, we do change the world. And with what you're doing is making a huge difference to get the word out about the solar energy and the small solar energy on our roofs, and everybody collectively will make a huge freaking difference in the world. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Yeah,
it's an honor, and I really appreciate you helping me spread the word. And if we can just get a couple thousand people into this revolution, the world's going to be a better place even sooner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll be exponential. I'll check back with you in about a year.
Perfect.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bill. I really, really appreciate it. And Devin thanks you too, from wherever he is. And
yes, hi, Devin.
Hi, Dev. And everything will be posted on the podcast, and all your contact information and links to your book and your podcast and everything. So I really, really, really appreciate you being here. So thanks. Any final words other than go out and get his book, get my book, get your book?
There's nothing better in life than to work towards goals much greater than ourselves. Yes. And whether it's cleaning up the water or building a small scale local energy systems, if you can recast your life as I did, from not what was not was in front of me, not what my business was, but in terms of something much larger, it changes everything. It changes every day. It changes the way you look at the world every day. And I wish for everyone to have the sense of purpose that this journey has given me, for me and my family.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. I totally agree. There's nothing better than serving in some way, whatever it is. And to fill us, inside, but also to make a difference. So thank you to you and your family.
Thank you, sir. Great to talk to you today.
Likewise.